All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into a word you use probably every day,
Yeah,
but maybe you haven't really, you know, thought too deeply about.
right.
And that word is absorb.
Absorb, yeah, it's one of those words
Yeah, we're gonna
that we kind of take for granted.
kind of take it for granted. We know what it means, but
Right, right.
what's the history of it? How is it actually used in different contexts?
Yeah,
And
where does it come from?
where does it come from, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're going to be surprised by some of the things we discover about this word as we go along here.
I think so too.
So let's just start with the very basics.
Okay.
When we say absorb, what do we actually mean?
Well, I mean, like, the most basic definition is to take something in and make it part of something else.
Hmm. So it's not just about, like, two things touching. It's about one thing becoming a part of the other.
Yeah, exactly. Like, really becoming integrated into it.
Okay, so can you give us an example? Like, how would we use absorb in a sentence?
Sure, like a really classic example is the sponge absorbed all the spilled water.
Right, so the sponge, it's not just that the water's on top of the sponge. The sponge is actually taking the water in, and it's becoming part of the sponge.
Exactly. And the sponge gets heavier and wetter. All that water is now part of the sponge itself.
Okay, that's a great, kind of concrete example, but
Right.
we can also use absorb in more, like, abstract ways,
Oh, no,
right?
absolutely. Like, we talk about being absorbed in a book.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He was so absorbed in the novel that he didn't even hear the phone ring.
Right, like you're so focused on what you're reading,
Yeah.
you're not paying attention to anything else around you.
It's like the outside world just fades away.
You're just soaking up the words, the story, the imagery,
Exactly.
and it's almost like, your mind is becoming part of that world.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very metaphorical use of the word, but it really captures that feeling of deep engagement.
Yeah, and then there's, how we use absorb in, like, science and,
Yeah.
more technical context.
Right, right.
Like, plants absorb sunlight to create energy.
Right. And that's getting at a very specific process like photosynthesis. But, again, it's that same idea of taking something in and using it to become something else.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's like the word itself is absorbing all these
Yeah.
different meanings and fitting into all these different situations.
That's a great way to put it. So we've seen how versatile absorb is, but have you ever wondered where this word came from, like its origins?
I have it actually, so where does it come from?
Well, like a lot of English words, absorb has its roots in Latin. It comes from the Latin word absorbere.
Absorbere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that word is actually a combination of two parts, ab and sorbere. Ab means away from, and sorbere means to suck in.
Wait, so the original meaning is like to suck away.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's really interesting. So absorb started out as this very physical, almost violent word.
It did.
And now it can be used in these really subtle metaphorical ways.
It's amazing how language evolves, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So we've talked about the meaning of absorb, but what about its different forms? Like, are there other ways to use this word?
Oh, definitely. Like, there's absorption, which is the noun form, right? So
Yeah.
you could say something like, the absorption of nutrients is essential for good health.
Right, so that's referring to the actual process of absorbing.
Exactly.
Okay, and then what about absorbent?
Absorbent is an adjective. It describes something that can absorb. Like we talk about absorbent paper towel.
Right, they're good at soaking things up.
Exactly.
So the word itself, it's like it's branching out, creating all these new forms and uses.
It is. And, another interesting thing is how absorb is used in what we call fixed collocations.
Okay, fixed collocations. Now that sounds complicated. What are those?
They're basically phrases where certain words are always used together. Like with absorb, you have phrases like absorb information.
Okay, yeah, like when you're
Yeah.
studying for a test.
Exactly. Or absorb shock. Like think about the suspension system on a car.
Right, it's absorbing the bumps in the road.
Exactly. Or absorb energy, like a solar panel.
Right, so it's not just one word, it's the combination of words
Yeah.
that creates this specific meaning.
Yeah, and those phrases become almost like their own little units of meaning.
I like that. Units of meaning. So
Yeah.
all these different ways to use absorb, but if we had to choose like one image that really captures the essence of this word, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's the image of a dry sponge being dipped into a puddle of water.
Okay, I can see that.
And you can just see the sponge slowly draw the water in, expanding and becoming heavier as it does so.
Yeah, it's a very simple image, but it really conveys that idea of taking something in and making it a part of yourself.
Exactly. And I think that image, that really sums up the power and the versatility of the word absorb.
Well, I think we've all absorbed a lot today about this word.
I think so too.
And, it's just amazing to me how much depth there is in even the simplest words that we use every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just goes to show that paying attention to language, like really thinking about the words we use, can open up all sorts of new insights and perspectives.
Absolutely. And on that note, I'm going to challenge all of our listeners. Think about a word that you use all the time, a word that maybe you take for granted, and spend a little time thinking about it. Where did it come from? How is it used? You might be surprised by what you discover.
I agree. Language is full of hidden treasures just waiting to be unearthed.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but I hope you'll join us next time for another fascinating exploration into the world of words.
See you then.